Picture this. It's 2 in the morning and you're lying awake staring at the ceiling. Not because you had too much coffee or because your neighbor's dog won't stop barking. You're awake because you just checked your bank account. And somehow, despite making more money than you did 5 years ago, you have less than $200 to your name until payday. And payday isn't for another week. You're not alone in this. A recent survey found that 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Think about that for a second. 7 out of 10 people are one unexpected car repair, one emergency room visit, one broken furnace away from complete financial chaos. And here's what keeps Bob up at night. Most of these people aren't broke because they don't earn enough. They're broke because nobody ever taught them the hidden rules of money. My name is Bob, and I spend way too much time thinking about why smart, hardworking people stay trapped in a cycle of financial anxiety despite doing everything society tells them to do. If you're someone who feels like money slips through your fingers like water no matter how hard you work, or if you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck while watching other people who make the same salary somehow build wealth, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're not talking about get-rich-quick schemes or complicated investment strategies. We're talking about 15 simple, powerful rules that will fundamentally change your relationship with money. These aren't the rules your bank tells you about. These aren't the rules your financial advisor mentions. These are the underground principles that wealthy people follow instinctively but rarely discuss publicly. Rule number 1. Pay yourself first, not last. Here's the thing that Bob learned the hard way. Most people treat savings like a diet. They say, I'll save whatever's left over at the end of the month. But here's the mathematical reality. There is never anything left over. Your expenses will always expand to consume whatever income you have. This is called Parkinson's law applied to personal finance. The wealthy flip this equation completely. On payday, before rent, before groceries, before anything else, they move a fixed percentage into savings. 10% minimum, 15% if you're serious, 20% if you want to actually build wealth. This isn't a suggestion. This is automation. You set up the transfer on payday so the money disappears before you can spend it. Let's do the math. If you make $50,000 a year and save 10%, that's $5,000 annually. Over 10 years at an 8% return, that becomes $78,000. If you wait to save whatever's left, you'll save zero because there will never be anything left. The first rule isn't about discipline, it's about removing the decision entirely. Rule number 2, the 24-hour rule for everything over $50. Bob made a mistake once. He saw a jacket in a store window. It was beautiful, marked down from $400 to $250, 50% off. He bought it immediately because it felt like losing money not to. He wore it twice. It's been hanging in his closet for 3 years. The hidden rule is this. Any purchase over $50 requires a mandatory 24-hour waiting period. No exceptions. You see something you want, you photograph it, you leave the store, and you sleep on it. Here's what happens during that waiting period. Your brain gets out of emotional purchase mode and into rational analysis mode. Studies show that 80% of impulse purchases are regretted within a week. But if you force yourself to wait one day, 65% of those impulses disappear completely. You wake up the next morning and realize you don't actually need the jacket or the gadget or the subscription service. You just wanted the dopamine hit of buying something. Let me show you the compound effect. If you avoid just one $50 impulse purchase per week using this rule, that's $2,600 per year. Invested at 8%, that becomes $42,000 in 10 years. The 24-hour rule isn't about denying yourself. It's about making sure that when you do spend, it's intentional. Rule number 3, never finance a depreciating asset. This is where Bob sees people destroy their financial futures without realizing it. A depreciating asset is anything that loses value over time. Cars, electronics, furniture, appliances. The hidden rule is simple but brutal. If it goes down in value, you pay cash. If you can't afford to pay cash, you can't afford it. Think about what happens when you finance a $30,000 car at 6% interest over 6 years. Your monthly payment is $497. Over the life of the loan, you'll pay $35,780 for a car that will be worth maybe $12,000 when you're done. You paid $23,780 in depreciation and interest combined for the privilege of driving something you couldn't afford. Now imagine you bought a 5-year-old Toyota for $10,000 cash instead. Same loan period, same $497 per month, but instead of making payments, you invest that money. In 6 years, you'd have $43,000 invested. The car you bought for cash is still running fine, and you have enough money to buy 4 more used cars if you wanted to. The wealthy understand something that broke people don't. Financing a depreciating asset means you're paying interest to lose money. You're actively working against yourself. The rule is non-negotiable. Cash only for things that go down in value. Rule number 4, the replacement fund principle. Bob learned this rule from a wealthy mentor who said something that changed everything. Rich people buy things twice, once when they purchase it and once when they replace it. Most people buy a refrigerator for $1,200 and think they're done. Then 12 years later, when it dies, they panic, put it on a credit card, and pay interest because they didn't plan for the inevitable. The replacement fund principle works like this. Everything you own will eventually break or need replacing. Your car, your roof, your water heater, your computer, your phone. When you buy something major, you immediately start a sinking fund for its replacement. If your car costs $15,000 and will last 10 years, you need to save $125 per month starting immediately. This sounds like a lot until you realize what it prevents. It prevents the emergency that forces you onto credit cards. It prevents the panic decision that makes you overpay. It prevents the cycle of always being in debt for something. When you need a new water heater and you have the cash sitting there waiting, you don't have an emergency, you have a Tuesday. Rule number 5, buy quality once or buy garbage forever. This is the Boots theory we talked about earlier, but Bob wants to make it concrete with a rule. For items you use daily, buy the highest quality you can afford and plan to own it for a decade. For items you use rarely, buy the cheapest functional option. Work boots, mattress, office chair, kitchen knives, winter coat. These are things you interact with every single day. Cheap versions will break, cause pain, or need replacing constantly. Expensive versions last and actually save money over time. Bob bought a $200 chef's knife 15 years ago. His neighbor bought a $30 set every 2 years. Bob has spent $200 total. His neighbor has spent $225 and has worse knives. But here's the trap. People apply this logic incorrectly. They buy the premium version of things they barely use. Bob doesn't need a $600 camping tent because he camps once per year. He needs a $70 tent that will survive 3 trips. The rule is about matching quality to frequency of use. Rule number 6, the 30-30. 30. Budget. Forget complicated budget apps with 17 categories. Bob uses a system so simple a child could understand it. Every dollar you earn gets split into 3 buckets. 30% for housing, 30% for living expenses, 30% for financial goals. The remaining 10% is your discretionary spending. Here's why this works. Housing at 30% means you're not house poor. If your rent or mortgage plus utilities exceeds 30% of your take-home, you will always be broke. Living expenses at 30%, food, transportation, insurance, means you're living within your means. Financial goals at 30%, savings, investments, debt payoff, means you're building wealth. That 10% discretionary is your life enjoyment fund without guilt. Most people do this backwards. They spend 45% on housing, 35% on living, 15% on entertainment, and 5% on savings. Then they wonder why they're stressed. The 30-30-30 rule forces you to make housing and lifestyle decisions that align with financial stability. Rule number 7, automate everything or trust nothing. Bob doesn't trust himself, neither should you. Humans are terrible at making the same good decision repeatedly. We get tired, stressed, busy, emotional. The hidden rule of wealthy people is that they don't rely on discipline. They rely on automation. Savings transfer, automated on payday. Retirement contribution, automated. Investment deposits, automated. Bill payments, automated. Credit card payoff, automated. Every single financial decision that needs to happen regularly should happen automatically without requiring your attention. Here's what this does psychologically. It removes decision fatigue. You're not deciding whether to save this month. The decision was made once, 6 months ago, when you set up the automation. Your job is just to not cancel it. This is the difference between people who say they'll save and people who actually have money. One group makes the decision monthly and fails. The other group made the decision once and succeeds. Rule number 8, the cash-only experiment. This rule sounds old-fashioned, but the psychology is undeniable. Bob wants you to try something for 30 days. Withdraw your budgeted spending money in cash at the start of the week. Use only cash for discretionary purchases. No cards, no apps, just physical money. Something magical happens when you hand over cash. The pain of paying is real and immediate. Studies show people spend 15 to 20% less when using cash versus cards because the psychological connection to money is stronger. When you tap a card, your brain doesn't register loss. When you hand over three $20 bills and get $2 back, you feel it. Try this for 1 month and track what happens. Most people are shocked at how much awareness they gain. You see exactly where money goes. You think twice about the $12 lunch because that's a physical bill leaving your wallet. This isn't about living on cash forever. It's about recalibrating your relationship with spending. Rule number 9, defeat lifestyle inflation before it defeats you. Bob got a promotion 5 years ago. His salary jumped from $60,000 to $75,000 per year. That's an extra $15,000 annually, $1,250 per month. You know what happened to his savings rate? Nothing. It stayed exactly the same because his lifestyle expanded. He moved to a nicer apartment, he bought a nicer car, he started eating out more. The extra money disappeared into an upgraded lifestyle, and his financial position didn't change at all. This is lifestyle inflation, and it's the single biggest wealth killer for high earners. The hidden rule is this: every time your income increases, immediately increase your savings rate by at least 50% of the raise. If you get a $200 per month raise, $100 goes to automated savings before you touch it. You can enjoy the other $100 guilt-free because you're also building wealth. If Bob had followed this rule, that $15,000 raise would have meant $7,500 in additional annual savings. Over 5 years at 8%, that would be $45,000. Instead, he has a nicer apartment and the same bank balance. Rule number 10, the true cost question. Before any purchase, Bob now asks one question: how many hours of my life does this actually cost? If you make $25 per hour after taxes, a $100 purchase costs you 4 hours of your life. A $500 purchase costs 20 hours, half a work week. When you frame purchases as time instead of money, decisions change. Is that designer purse worth 80 hours of your life? Is that new phone worth 40 hours? Sometimes the answer is yes, and that's fine. But most of the time, when you calculate the hour cost, you realize you're trading too much of your finite life for things that don't matter. This rule gets even more powerful when you consider opportunity cost. That $500 doesn't just cost 20 hours of work. Invested at 8% for 10 years, it becomes $1,080. So the real cost of that purchase is $1,080 of future wealth, or 43 hours of future passive income you'll never have. Rule number 11, the 3-month maintenance budget. Bob used to think of maintenance as an emergency. The car needs brakes? Emergency. The roof leaks? Emergency. The AC breaks in July? Emergency. But here's what he realized. None of these things are emergencies. They're predictable, inevitable expenses that people pretend are surprises. The rule is this: calculate what you spend annually on maintenance and repairs for everything you own. Cars, home, appliances, electronics. Then divide by 12. That's your monthly maintenance budget. Put it in a separate account and use it when things break. Most people spend around 3 to 5% of their home value annually on maintenance. If your home is worth $300,000, that's $9,000 to $15,000 per year, or $750 to $1,250 per month. When the water heater dies, you don't panic. You transfer money from the maintenance fund. This eliminates the emergency mentality that forces bad financial decisions. You're not scrambling for $3,000 when the AC breaks. You have it sitting there because you planned for reality. Rule number 12. The side income mandate. Bob doesn't care how good your job is or how stable you think it is. The hidden rule is that in 2025, everyone needs a second income stream, even if it's small. Not because your job isn't enough, but because single income dependence is a massive risk that most people ignore. Your company could downsize, your industry could change, you could get injured, the economy could tank. If 100% of your income comes from one employer, you have zero diversification. You're putting all your financial eggs in a basket controlled by someone else's decisions. The rule is to develop at least one additional income stream that generates 5 to 10% of your primary income. This could be freelancing, consulting, rental property, a small online business, anything. The goal isn't to replace your job. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can generate money outside of your employer's paycheck. When Bob started doing freelance work on weekends, it generated an extra $400 per month. That's not life-changing money, but here's what it did psychologically. It made him less dependent on his job, less afraid of losing it, more willing to negotiate, more confident. The income was secondary to the freedom it created. Rule number 13, the 10-year liquidity test. This rule separates people who think they're building wealth from people who actually are. For every investment or asset you acquire, Bob asks this question: can I convert this to cash within 30 days without losing more than 10% of its value? If the answer is no, you don't own an asset. You own a liability disguised as an investment. Real estate that you can't sell quickly. Collectibles with no liquid market. Business investments with lock-up periods. These might appreciate in value, but if you can't access that value when you need it, you're not actually wealthy. You're illiquid. The rule is that at least 70% of your net worth should pass the liquidity test. This doesn't mean you can't own a house or invest in a business. It means the majority of your wealth should be in stocks, bonds, index funds, or other assets you can sell within days if life happens. Bob watched a friend become house rich and cash poor. He had $400,000 in home equity and $6,000 in the bank. When he lost his job, he couldn't pay his mortgage because you can't pay bills with equity. He had to sell in a panic and lost money. Liquidity is freedom. Rule number 14, the annual financial audit. One day per year, Bob sits down and does a complete financial audit. This isn't about taxes. This is about asking hard questions. What subscriptions am I paying for that I don't use? What insurance policies are costing more than they should? What expenses have crept into my life without me noticing? What financial decisions did I make this year that I regret? The rule is to schedule this audit the same day every year. Bob does it on his birthday because it forces reflection. During this audit, he's cancelled gym memberships he stopped using, switched insurance providers, and saved $400 annually. Identified subscription services costing $60 per month that he forgot about. Most people lose thousands of dollars per year to financial drift. Small expenses that made sense 2 years ago, but don't anymore. Services you signed up for and forgot. Better options that exist now, but you never researched. The annual audit catches this drift before it becomes a decade of wasted money. Rule number 15. Abundance comes from subtraction, not addition. This is the final rule, and it's the most important. Bob spent 20 years thinking that having more money meant buying more things. Bigger house, nicer car, better clothes, fancier restaurants. The math always felt wrong, though. The more he made, the more he spent, and the less free he felt. Then he learned the truth. Wealth isn't about having the most stuff. It's about needing the least. Every possession you own costs money to buy, maintain, store, insure, and eventually replace. The person with 20 pairs of shoes doesn't feel twice as wealthy as the person with 10. They feel more stressed about closet space. The rule is this: financial freedom comes from reducing needs, not increasing income. If you can live well on $3,000 per month instead of $5,000, you just gave yourself a permanent $2,000 monthly raise without asking your boss. You cut the amount you need to save for retirement by 40%. You reduce the income you need to maintain if you get laid off or want to switch careers. Bob went through his life and asked what he could eliminate without reducing his actual happiness. He moved to a smaller apartment and saved $600 per month. He sold his car and used public transit, saving $400. He canceled services and subscriptions, saving another $200. That's $1,200 per month, $14,400 annually, in increased savings without earning one extra dollar. Most people are trapped in golden handcuffs. They make great money but spend everything, so they can't afford to quit, can't afford to take risks, can't afford to live differently. The person making $50,000 who only needs $30,000 to be happy has more freedom than the person making $200,000 who needs $190,000 to maintain their lifestyle. The math that changes everything. Let's bring all 15 rules together and see what happens. Bob is 30 years old, makes $60,000 per year. He follows these rules religiously. He pays himself first, automating 15% to savings. That's $9,000 annually. He avoids lifestyle inflation when he gets raises, adding 50% of every increase to savings. He uses the 30-30-30 budget. He drives a paid-off car and lives in a modest apartment. By age 40, following these rules, Bob has around $140,000 invested. By 50, $400,000. By 60, over $800,000. He retires at 62 with $1 million, having never earned more than $90,000 per year at his peak. His coworker who made the same salary but didn't follow the rules retires with $80,000 and depends entirely on Social Security. The only difference was following the 15 hidden rules. These rules aren't sexy. They won't make you rich overnight. But they're the mathematical reality of how regular people build wealth in America. You don't need to win the lottery. You don't need a six-figure salary. You need to follow principles that compound over time. If this video gave you a framework that actually makes sense, if you realize that maybe building wealth isn't about earning more, but about playing by different rules, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep breaking down the invisible rules that separate people who have money from people who make money. Thanks for watching, and Bob will see you in the next one.